Hello. Welcome to Midnight Music Review in the Attic. Today we have Pedrum Siadatian with us, and we'll be going through the music of Paint, his solo project, as well as some other things he's done and is doing. Pedrum, are you there?
Checking, 1, 2, checking.
There you are. Perfect. Pedrum is also known for being the lead guitarist of the band Ayers. Until recently I believed that his solo project, Paint, had been born with his first official album released in 2018 by the label Mexican Summer, but researching Pedrum's career to make this show, I discovered a tape of which only 100 copies were released in the year 2011 before the first Ayers album, The Optical Sounds of Paint, and which in fact contained some primitive versions of songs that later appeared on the band's official albums, such as Don't You Forget It. Hey Pedrum, what about Ayers? Do you keep playing or recording new music?
Yes. Our single just came out a couple weeks ago, and another one's gonna come out soon. And then the record is gonna come out, I think, later this year. I don't know the date, but it's still an active band. It was inactive during the pandemic, like most bands, I guess.
So well, going back to Paint, as we said before, the first official album came out in 2018. Pedrum had been experimenting with his 4-track for a long time at home and accumulating cassettes with recordings that ended up forming this album full of tiny psychedelic rock gems, like Moldy Man. Whenever I listen to Moldy Man, the sound reminds me of the Grateful Dead in the 60s. Which are your favorite bands of that time, my dear Pedrum?
I've never heard that song be compared to the Dead. That's interesting. I mean, I respect the Dead, but I only really like a handful of songs. I'm not a Deadhead, but I don't hate them. I mean, I don't think they're bad. Sometimes it just kind of sounds like a bar band or something. But in terms of 60s music, Sid Barrett and Kevin Ayers, and I find mostly like British stuff. I love the Velvet Underground, of course, and the Byrds, and Love. I like the Fugs. I can't think of anything else right now. I mean, there's other stuff, I just can't think of it. There's too much.
The sunlight hurts my eyes. Guess I'll stay where it's moldy inside. Staying strong, it don't matter.
I Love Wash. What do you remember from the moment you recorded it? What were you doing at that time? How long has it been? 5 or 6 years?
I remember sitting on the floor and playing around with my Mellotron. Remember that? So yeah, it was probably 2016 or something. 6 years. 6 years. Maybe 7. Disgusting. I don't remember much about it. I just remember sitting on the floor. I was living in Laurel Canyon at the time. A very tiny back house. I mean, I'm in a back house now, but it's bigger than that back house. That back house was oppressively small. But I lived there for 7 years. I kind of like living in small places, I guess. But that started to get a little too small as I got my stuff, and the walls started to feel, I don't know how much longer I last. And those things were really small, but I had a fireplace and there was an air conditioner.
Feel high if you've never felt low. Let it wash over so you can begin. Let it wash over so you can begin. And do it again and again.
2 years after Paint's debut album, the next one came, Spiritual Vegas, in 2020, released at the beginning of the pandemic. I remember that it was with that album that I discovered Paint's existence with enthusiasm, and I wrote to Pedrum to make him a music video, which was Landman. Kevin Ayers is mentioned a lot when your music is reviewed. Do you feel him very close to what you have done?
I do. I went through a really intense a few years where I was obsessed with Kevin Ayers. Now I feel like I don't listen to him as much as I do Robert Wyatt. I feel like I listen to Robert Wyatt way more. But it doesn't mean I still don't love Ayers. I feel like in general, though, Robert Wyatt made more stuff that I like. Kevin Ayers kind of, during the 80s, it got kind of bad. And he started to sound like a blues Kermit the Frog or something. And there's some stuff I like from that period, but Robert Wyatt is kind of more steady, I feel. Through the decades, it's always pretty consistent and good. But yeah, I love Kevin.
Pedrum, would you have liked to live and make your music in another era? Maybe 50 years ago?
It's hard to say. I've thought about that. Ultimately, I think I'm a very modern person. I like living today. I think maybe my retro fetishism used to be stronger for that time. But now I feel pretty at home with today.
You are of Iranian descent, am I correct? Have you lived there? Or were you born in the USA?
Yes, I am of Iranian descent. Was I born there? No. I was born in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Have you traveled to the Middle East as an adult?
I've been to Iran. Last time I went to Iran was probably, I think it was 2015. And I've been to Egypt. I went to Egypt the end of 2019 and early 2020.
Do you like there?
Do I like? Yeah, I like it. I like going over there.
Spiritual Vegas closes with the voice of William Burroughs singing drunkenly in Spanish. Have the writers of the Beat Generation influenced you? I have seen that from time to time you have given some readings of your poetry. Tell me a bit about that, my sweet lord.
Yeah, I love the Beats. I especially love Gregory Corso. He's my favorite. Happy Birthday of Death for anyone who's interested. Yeah, I've done a few poetry readings. I'd like to put out a book or something someday. I'm with the new record. I'm including a zine that has some experimental writing and lyrics and stuff, so people can get a taste if they want.
Adios, muchachas, compañeros de mí.
We are now listening to Rock Music from the next Paint album due out at the end of July. Did you record the stuff from your upcoming album at home? Can you make us a video tour and show us your studio?
I did record it at home, and I moved around a lot, so I recorded in a few different places. But yeah, it was all home recorded. I'm sitting in front of my home studio. Look, see some stuff here. It's not much, but it's all I need to make my ridiculous music.
Your upcoming album, Lost for Words, sounds very different from previous Paint albums. I have understood that the label that released those records did not know how to appreciate it or assimilate the change in your style, and that's why you are creating Grape Street label to release it on your own. On the album there are almost no lyrics, there are no words. The change is very noticeable. Could you tell me everything you want to say about this change?
Well, I think the last record, Spiritual Vegas, that came out, it was July 2020, which was in the middle of the pandemic, BLM protests, and a kind of Me Too movement that was going on. So it was a really bad time to put out a record. It felt very indulgent or something. And I don't think the record did especially well. And I was dropped. I was dropped from Mexican Summer, and they didn't give a fuck what I was gonna make next. They didn't seem interested. And I don't know, kind of cold calling labels and sending a record around is, I found to be really humiliating and usually ignored. So that's kind of why I decided to create my own label, so that I could just kind of put it out on my terms and not have to send it around like an idiot. in terms of how the record sounds, I think it came about from being alone, and I got some different gear that was more, like samplers, and it became more drum machine and electronic than my previous stuff. And kind of I receded into my own world because I wasn't really hanging out with anyone, and that's kind of what the record is. There are some lyrics, but they're kind of disembodied, and there's some like spoken word stuff. But there's not really anything in it like my other records, which I think is good. It's nice to move on, I think.
Tell me about your record label project, Grape Street Inc. Are you going to release only your music, or also the music of other artists? There's a song on your Spiritual Vegas album called Grape Street. It's a street in Los Angeles, isn't it? Do you live there, Pedrum?
Yeah, it is a street in Los Angeles. It's kind of South LA. It's where the Grape Street Gang has its territory, which is, I think, a subdivision, or it's part of the Crips. They wear all purple, and they have very kind of small territory down there. But seeing the street sign Grape Street when I was driving by one day kind of got my imagination going, and I wrote a song about it. But yeah, I made the label to put out my record, and eventually I would like to put out cassettes of friends so they don't have to deal with stupid labels, and they can just put it out and have a physical copy of their records.
One with duality, two with a deal of crap, three with reality. I sense the silence.
Pedrum, I would like to present to our public fragments of your upcoming album mixed with the videos you make of your walks and trips around the country. You have a great eye for detail. A very interesting way of seeing and capturing the landscape around you. What camera do you use? A mini DV? Have you been doing this for a long time?
First of all, thank you so much, Salvador. That is so nice of you. I use a Hi8, which is what I'm using right now, actually. I haven't been doing it for too long. I guess I started doing it 2021. That's pretty recent. It's nice to just shoot stuff and kind of be able to have some kind of visual representation of a tour. Little memories and snippets of the moments with friends traveling around and just kind of cutting it up. It's really fun to watch later on. It makes me feel really nostalgic whenever I see those clips again.
He just had a couple bounces go his way. The pucks were definitely in favor for a lot of the game, you know.
Well, I love the style of your videos. Now, Pedrum, what about your activity with painting? Do you exhibit your works? I have been looking the works you did on Polaroids. You have a very defined color palette. Have you named it? You can call it deep purple. Ha!
You have a very defined color palette, huh? Like, I do like purple. I like blue too, and green, and red, yellow, sometimes black. What else is there? Orange, red. I have a capacity for all of them. I've shown paintings a couple of times in some group shows. I did larger versions of some Polaroids on kind of thin styrene sheets that are like that. And I use my fingers and I smear them around. And they're very expensive to frame. If only someone bought them.
Pedrum, do you make those minimalist flyers for your shows, typed with typewriter and small drawings like the tongues of the Stones? I love them.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I made those. It's kind of very scrappy flyers, and I love the Stones tongue. I like to use it for everything. Especially the worse I do it, the better it looks, I think.
Ho! Here is the flyer for the presentation of your new album, next July the 28th. I have been watching on your Instagram some videos and photos of a show in Los Angeles in a beautiful place, like an old theater, with puppeteers. Where was that? It looked so cool.
That was one of my favorite shows I've ever played in my life, I think. That was at the Bob Baker Marionette Theater on York in Los Angeles. Yeah, it's an old puppet theater, and they had me send the tracks that we'd be playing so that they could prepare different puppets and routines for the different songs, and it was so fun, and everyone was just like smiling and laughing during the show because the puppets were so strange and was really fascinating to watch, and the puppeteers did a really good job. They took it really seriously. The crowd looked like they were having a good time, except for one friend who told me he's afraid of puppets, and I remember looking out and seeing him, and he looked really scared by the puppets. I think he's okay now, though.
Do you have a side project to paint called Thick?
Yeah, Thick is a project with me and my friend Jackson McIntosh. Our friend asked us to come up with some music for his outdoor market, and so we started working on some songs, and then we busted out of the outdoor market scene and started playing actual clubs, which we've done a few, but that's mostly instrumental, and there's samples and things. I really like playing in that band. That record should come out at some point. I need to get it mastered right now. Yeah, it's called Thick. THIQ.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, remember that if you want a vinyl copy of Pedrum's next album, you can get it on his Bandcamp, and comes with companion pieces in. Thank you very much for being with us tonight, Pedrum.
Bye-bye.
Good night.